Welcome to the CyberGuide for the interior of the Thomas Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. CyberGuides are narrated videos that provide interesting information about notable sites and monuments around town. This CyberGuide provides information about the interior of the Jefferson Memorial. Also available are guides for the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Memorial, and other significant locations. The Thomas Jefferson Memorial honors the third President of the United States, who was also one of the thought leaders of the colonial movement to gain independence from Great Britain. The interior of the memorial centers on a bronze statue of Jefferson, which stands 19 feet tall, weighs 10,000 pounds, and sits atop a 6-foot-tall base. Jefferson is portrayed as a visionary statesman and writer who gazes northward toward the White House. His ankle-length fur cloak was a gift from General Tadeusz Kościuszko, a Polish military engineer with an interest in human rights who traveled to America and assisted the American revolutionary efforts by, among other things, designing forts and garrisons for the Continental Army. During this time, he became a friend and lifelong correspondent of Thomas Jefferson. Sculptor Rudolph Evans, who is discussed later in this CyberGuide, is known for his thorough preparation and lifelike renderings of his subject. I have not been able to locate his work papers regarding the Jefferson Memorial statue, but noticed a strong resemblance, particularly the fur-collared cloak, between the statue and a painting made by American artist Rembrandt Peale in 1805. When the memorial was dedicated on April 13, 1943, on Jefferson's 200th birthday, the building housed a plaster statue of Jefferson that was painted to look like bronze. The picture that is now on your screen shows a workman, splattered with plaster, removing the temporary statue after the war. The current statue was completed and installed in 1947 after World War II restrictions on civilian use of metal were lifted. Jefferson was, by most accounts, not a gifted orator. It is not surprising, therefore, that the inscriptions on the walls of the memorial are from his writings, not his speeches. Just below the domed ceiling is an inscription that summarizes Jefferson's attitude toward individual liberty, saying, "I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man." The quote is taken from a letter written by then Vice President Jefferson to Dr. Benjamin Rush on September 23, 1800, and affirms Jefferson's continuing opposition to having a state-sponsored religion. Rush was a physician who became the Surgeon General of the Continental Army under George Washington and signer of the Declaration of Independence. Jefferson was a thoughtful and learned man whose insights are made known to us primarily through his writings. Inscribed on each of the 4 walls of the Jefferson Memorial are excerpts. Because these inscriptions cover topics of significant complexity, this narrative only provides a cursory overview. A more detailed look at each of them can be found in a separate CyberGuide. The northwest wall, which begins with the words, "Almighty God hath created," advocates religious freedom. The northeast wall, which begins, "God who gave us life," covers several topics that were important to Jefferson. The southeast wall contains thoughts on making changes to a constitution. Remember, this memorial was built during a time when several of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's proposals were declared unconstitutional. The inscription behind and to the left of Jefferson is among the most recognizable in the world. However, the events leading up to the Declaration of Independence are not as well known. On July 2, 1776, the Continental Congress voted in favor of a resolution that stated that the United Colonies were free and independent states, and all political connection with Great Britain was dissolved. John Adams, an ardent supporter of independence, wrote to his wife that the 2nd of July 1776 would be the most memorable in the history of America and should be celebrated with pomp and parade, bells, bonfires, and illumination. He quickly came to understand, however, that the 4th of July was actually the day that would be remembered, although the Declaration of Independence really served as just an announcement, a publicity document, if you will, explaining the rationale for the action taken by Congress 2 days earlier. Memorials often have symbolic aspects to them. The number of steps leading up to the Lincoln Memorial or the choice of an obelisk as the shape of the Washington Monument are examples that come to mind. With the Jefferson Memorial, a subtle source of symbolism is the origin of the stone that was used. The National Park Service provides this explanation. The outer stonework is Vermont Imperial Danby marble, while the interior walls are white Georgia marble. This symbolizes the geographic extremes of the original 13 states from New England to the Deep South. Inside, we find stone from an expanding Union, floor marble from Tennessee, and inner dome limestone from Indiana. Since President Jefferson remains tied to the Louisiana Purchase, his bronze statue stands atop a large block of Minnesota granite with a gray Missouri marble ring surrounding its base. Missouri and parts of Minnesota were acquired in the Louisiana Purchase authorized by Jefferson in 1803. A competition was held, and acclaimed American sculptor Rudolph Evans was selected from among 101 applicants to create the bronze statue of Jefferson that would be installed in the memorial. Evans was born in Washington, D.C. in 1878, raised in Virginia, and studied sculpting in Paris at the École des Beaux-Arts. For most of his career, he maintained a studio in New York. He was awarded the French Cross of the Legion of Honor and the Order of the Crown of Italy. His works appear in numerous museums, including the Smithsonian, as well as Statuary Hall in the U.S. Capitol. Evans' works have been praised for their simple and dignified pose and incorporation of detail in such a manner so as not to distract from the overall effect. One of his statues was lauded for its extraordinary combination of likeness and interpretation. We hope you have enjoyed this CyberGuide and encourage you to visit some of our other presentations.